Hello and good morning, my dear students. Okay, so at last, no, we are in the last module of this subject, and of course in the last lesson for this module. Okay, so this morning I am going to talk about integrated cardiovascular function. No, so in this particular lesson, you will learn what are actually the main purpose or functions of the cardiovascular system and how are these particular functions being maintained, no, in the body of an animal. Okay, so again, please make most of the time. You still have many days to read, reread, learn and relearn, no, in Physio. So I hope that this is going to be a productive semester for all of you, and I hope that all of you will pass the subject, no, and your all other subjects in this semester. Without further ado, let us proceed to the remaining slides of this presentation. The cardiovascular system, guys, has its priorities. No? The number one priority of the cardiovascular system is to ensure that there is actually a proper gas and heat transport. Okay, so when we talk about proper gas, of course, you know that each cell in the body would need oxygen for aerobic metabolism, okay, or cellular respiration. And it is the main goal, actually, or the main priority of the cardiovascular system to supply that gas. No? And another thing is that because we are actually a we are capable rather of thermoregulation, no? The cardiovascular system also plays a part in proper heat transport. No? And then the second priority of the cardiovascular system is the arterial blood pressure or maintenance of the arterial blood pressure. Okay, so we need to maintain the arterial blood pressure so that every minute, every millisecond of the animal's life, a portion of blood will be delivered continuously. Dili siya maputol-putol, because lisod kayo, dili continuous ang supply of oxygen, dili continuous ang dissipation of heat, into the body. So these are the two priorities of the cardiovascular system. Number one of its priorities is proper gas and heat transport, and number two would be arterial blood pressure maintenance. Okay, so the gas transport and blood pressure are actually monitored by arterial sensors and regulated in part by the cardiovascular system. And this is to ensure proper blood flow and of course proper arterial pressure. Okay, talking about maintenance of proper gas transport and the mean arterial blood pressure, so we have what we call the arterial baroreceptors. Okay? So kining mga baroreceptors, these are mechanical receptors that are actually capable of sensing a change in the arterial blood pressure. Okay? And with respect to that, any changes can be, it could send signal and it can be transcribed by these baroreceptors as a stimulus, and this will be of course delivered to the brain for further further meddling. Okay, so we have here this is figure 9-62 from Sherwood et al. So we have here the location of the arterial baroreceptors. So we have here duha, okay? So we have here the carotid sinus nga baroreceptor located here in the, of course, the carotid sinus, okay? And then we have also the aortic arch baroreceptor located, of course, in the aortic arch or near the aorta. Okay, so The arterial baroreceptors, they are strategically located to monitor the mean arterial blood pressure in the arteries, no? That actually supply blood to the brain in case of the carotid sinus baroreceptor, and of course to the aortic arch and the aortic arch baroreceptor, which is actually supplying the rest of the body. Okay? So, mo ni siya ang uh, carotid sinus, no, coming from the common carotid arteries, no, which actually supplies blood to the brain. And of course, we have here the aortic arch baroreceptor, which is of course somehow a portion of the aorta, which supplies blood to the rest of the body. Okay, so kini sila, once nga makadetect sila of there's something wrong, there's a increased blood pressure, decreased blood pressure, they would send, no, and neural signals to the cardiovascular center in the medulla. Okay, mo send sila og neural signals na to the cardiovascular control center in the medulla. And this cardiovascular control system would now say unsa man ato bang pakusgan or atong pahinayan ang heart contraction. Depende sa mean arterial pressure. Okay. So this is here. We have here the firing rate, no? We have figure 9-63. The firing rate in the afferent neuron from the carotid sinus baroreceptor in relation to the magnitude of mean arterial pressure. So as you can see, in normal circumstances, so meaning to say, na siya sa 80 to 120, no? Arterial pressure, mmHg. Tanawa, no? So ang iyang firing is kuan siya, na siya'y pattern characteristic nga kuan siya kanang well distributed or dini lang siya, no, kay mao may pagtaas niya, but kung na-maintain na siya is equal distribution, no? But take a look if mo increase ang imong arterial pressure, say 90 to 160 mmHg, okay? Unsay mahitabo, no? Pas-pas kaayo ang firing rate sa imong afferent neuron. And the same is true. The same is reciprocal or reverse when there is a decrease in the arterial pressure. Hinay pod ang firing sa imong carotid sinus nga baroreceptor. Okay, so this tells us that under normal circumstances, ang firing rate sa afferent neuron arising from the carotid sinus baroreceptor would be unsa man in normal interval, na, but when it comes to increased nga arterial blood pressure, mutaas pud siya, and it would send signal sa pikas nga uy yung taas ang kuan dire, may taas ang pressure unsa man, no? And then of course once nga mo decrease sad, another approach na sad coming from the medulla, which is the cardiovascular center, control center of the brain. Okay, now in figure 9-64, we also have here the summary of the effects of parasympathetic and sympathetic nervous systems on factors that influence the mean arterial blood pressure. Okay, so when we talk about the parasympathetic stimulation, when it stimulates the heart, it would directly decrease the heart rate. Okay? And in return, it would decrease also the cardiac output, and it would lead to the decrease in arterial blood pressure. Okay? However, when we're talking about the sympathetic stimulation, okay, sa may buhaton in the heart, it would actually increase the rate and increase the contractile strength of the heart, the rate of contraction, and then in turn, kung mo-increase ang contractile strength of the heart, there will also be increase in the stroke volume. Okay? And then there will be increase in cardiac output because of these factors, no? And of course, when there's increase in cardiac output, there will also be increase in blood pressure. Okay. Now, how about the sympathetic stimulation in the arterioles? Okay, so sa arterioles, mo increase ang vasoconstriction. Okay, so once nga na vasoconstriction, increase in vasoconstriction, high vasoconstriction, unsa may mahitabo? There will be increased total peripheral resistance. Okay? Mugamay man ang lumen, di ba? Ang radius. So meaning, naa siya taas nga total peripheral resistance and there will be increase in blood pressure as well. Okay. And then, another of the sympathetic stimulation will be in the veins. No? Increased vasoconstriction again of the veins will increase the venous return to the heart, and this would in turn increase the stroke volume, and of course, it would lead to increase in cardiac output, and it will also increase the blood pressure. Okay, so this, my dear students, is the summary of the effects of the parasympathetic and sympathetic nervous systems on factors that influence the mean arterial blood pressure. So, parasympathetic stimulation is always lowering the blood pressure because it is, of course, mainly for rest and digest. And sympathetic stimulation is mainly for increasing blood pressure. Okay. Now, let's proceed to this figure 9-65, wherein baroreflexes are there to restore the blood pressure to normal. Okay? So, let us take this one, letter A. When the baroreceptor reflex in response to an elevation in blood pressure. Okay? So, when the blood pressure becomes elevated above normal, okay, it would actually increase the carotid sinus and aortic arch receptor potential. Kabalo naman mo aning carotid sinus and aortic arch ng mga baroreceptors, diba? And then the rate of firing in the afferent nerves of these particular baroreceptors would also increase, na? And this would actually activate the cardiovascular center in the medulla of the brain, na? Once nga ma-activated ang cardiovascular system, ma-trigger siya, what will happen next is that there will be decreased sympathetic cardiac nerve activity. Hinayan, because, diba, sympathetic activity would always entail for a higher blood pressure, no? And there will be decreased sympathetic vasoconstrictor nerve activity, and there will be increased in parasympathetic nerve activity. Okay? So, sympathetic cardiac nerve activity, cardiac nerve will be unsa man? Muhinay siya. Muhinay siyag fire. Therefore, muhinay ang contraction and the force of contraction. The rate of contraction and force of contraction. Chronotropic and inotropic effect. No? And then, decrease po ang sympathetic vasoconstriction nerve activity. So, this has two targets, the arteriole and the venule or the veins. No? So, mo-vasodilate, no? Dili siya mo-vasoconstrict. It's doing the opposite. Therefore, mo-decrease again ang blood pressure. And when it's going to increase the parasympathetic nerve activity, what will happen is that, okay, it would also mo-decrease na sad ang heart, no? Heart rate and the likes, no? So, in turn, or as a result, there will be decrease in heart rate, no? And decrease in stroke volume and decrease in arteriolar and venous and there will be, arteriolar and venous vasodilation. Okay. And so, after that, there will be decreased cardiac output and there will be decrease in total peripheral resistance that would lead to the blood pressure decrease towards normal. Okay, gets na. Next, we have here, in letter B, when the baroreceptor reflects in response to failure or fall, no, hinay ang blood pressure, what would the baroreceptors do? Of course, no, mutaas ang ilang firing activity. Muhinay ang ilang firing activity. No? So when the blood pressure falls below normal, there will be decreased carotid sinus and aortic arch receptor potential. Hinay. And this would decrease the rate of firing in the afferent nerves. And this would send signal to the cardiovascular system. Now, what will happen? What will the cardiovascular do? Okay, mao na gyud na ang default function, no, sa imong cardiovascular system. Depende na siya sa rate of firing sa imong baroreceptors. Now, kung muhinay ang rate of firing, ang cardiovascular system would actually iyan ni siyang i-perceive as na ay low blood pressure. And then what will happen is that iyang i-increase ang sympathetic cardiac nerve activity, increase ang inotropic and chronotropic activity of the heart. Then there will be increase in the sympathetic vasoconstrictor nerve activity. Okay, mo vasoconstrict ang imong arteriole and ang imong veins or venules, no? And there will be a decrease in parasympathetic nerve activity. So when there's decrease in the parasympathetic nerve activity, klaro na, no? Walay mo counteract sa sympathetic activity. Therefore, there will be increased heart rate, increased stroke volume, and arteriolar and venous vasoconstriction. Now, this would lead to increased cardiac output and increased total peripheral resistance. No? So, this would lead to increase in blood pressure towards normal. And that, my dear students, is the baroreflexes function to restore the blood pressure to normal. Okay, so next of the figures that we need to decipher is the magnitude and distribution of the cardiac output at rest and during moderate exercise. Okay, so at rest, so typical values of the carbon dioxide are 5,000, no? Or 93 over 0.0186, no? So, mo ni siya ang percent cardiac output. We have here the flow and we have here the different organs nga iyang adtuan. When the animal is at rest, no? So, 27% will be going to the digestive tract and the liver, 20% in the kidneys, 9% in the skin, 13% in the brain, 3% in the heart, 15% in the skeletal muscle, and 13% to the bone and other organs. Now, imagine, kung mayroon kag ml per minute, 1,350 ml for the digestive, mo na ilang madawat per minute ha, 1,000 for the kidneys, 450 for the skin, 650 for the brain, 150 for the heart, 750 for the skeletal muscle, and 650 for the bone and other tissues. But this is going to change abruptly when the animal is undergoing any activity, specifically strenuous activity that would require conversion of some blood to the other organs which need it the most. Na? So, unsay mahitabo, ang imong digestive system which actually 27%, mahimo na lamang siyang 4.8% ang iyang madawat or 600 ml na lang. The kidneys as well, 4.4% or 550 from 1,000. So, dili makita ninyo ang percent change in flow, no? Hingubos siya og 56%, no? Because from 27, nahimo na lang siyang 4.8, no? And then from 20, nahimo siyang 4.4, so 45% ang decrease. Now, the skin would actually receive 13.6% from the original nga 9% niya. So, mutaas siya og 370%, no? And then, ang flow niya dito is 1.7 na. Okay, and then the brain, there will be no change because the brain should always maintain the same nga blood flow all throughout. Mag-unsa man siya. Okay? And then, heart, mo increase siya og 367%. So, kanina, from 3%, mahimo siyang 4.4. Okay? And then, of course, the skeletal muscle, which would now receive 64% of the overall blood supply. No? And it would entail it an increase of 1,066%. Okay? So, 8,000 ml per minute. And bone and other, muubos siya into 30%. So, from the original of 13%, mahimo na lang siyang 3.5%. That, my dear students, muna siya ang mahitabo. Okay, kung mag-rest ka and mukalit ra kag active, na? Okay, next we have here table 9-4, no? So these are the cardiovascular changes during strenuous activity, no? So we have here the cardiovascular variables such as your heart rate, your venous return, the stroke volume, the cardiac output, blood flow to active skeletal muscles and heart muscles, blood flow to the brain, blood flow to the skin, blood flow to the digestive system, kidneys, and other organs, total peripheral resistance, and mean arterial blood pressure. So, unsa man ang change, increase. So, kung mo-increase siya, it occurs as a result of increased sympathetic and decreased parasympathetic activity of the SA node. Venous return will be increased, occurs as a result of sympathetically induced venous vasoconstriction. Stroke volume, kung mo-increase ang venous return, no? Cardiac output, kung mo-increase ang heart rate and stroke volume. Blood flow to the active skeletal muscle, the increase will occur as a result of locally controlled arterial vasodilation. So blood flow to the brain, there will be unchanged. Blood flow to the skin, taas. Blood flow to the digestive system, ubos. Total peripheral resistance will decrease, na? And mean arterial blood pressure will actually increase during strenuous activity. Okay, now let us again decipher another figure, no? So figure 9-67, which is the determinants of mean arterial blood pressure. Okay, so the mean arterial blood pressure will be maintained by number 1, total peripheral resistance, and of course cardiac output. But kining cardiac output of total peripheral resistance, they're also maintained by or influenced by some factors, na? So, of course, mo start ta sa cardiac output, na? So, ang cardiac output can be influenced by the heart rate and of course, the stroke volume. Kung unsa kadaghan na ang mobalik nga blood o unsa kapaspasa mo ang rate sa contraction of the heart, no? And this heart rate can be actually influenced by parasympathetic activity and also sympathetic activity and epinephrine. Okay? So both kining heart rate, parasympathetic activity, but kining stroke volume and heart rate can be both influenced by sympathetic activity and epinephrine, na? And in return, sa may buhaton, kini pong sympathetic activity and epinephrine, makapataas po niya sa venous return or maka-influence siya sa venous return. Okay? And venous return, of course, is one factor that is a determining factor of stroke volume. Okay? Now, also, kining venous return is determined by the blood volume, kung unsa gyud ang naa sa vessels, no? And of course, the respiratory activity, kung kahinomdom pa mo, and skeletal muscle activity, katong natural nga valve nga i-produce sa imong skeletal muscle, and then respiratory, and then the suction effect of the heart as well, no? And then cardiac suction effect, no? Mo na siya. And then of course, also, the blood volume can be influenced by passive bulk flow fluid shifts between vascular and interstitial fluid compartments and salt and water balance. Okay, influence which is salt and water balance, which is influenced also by vasopressin, renin, angiotensin, aldosterone system. Okay, now how about the total peripheral resistance? Actually, naapoy say sa iyaha ang skeletal muscle activity, no? Kung once nga magsigig contract ang skeletal muscle, it can contribute to the local metabolic control of the total peripheral resistance, no? And then sympathetic activity and epinephrine as well, vasopressin and angiotensin 2 for extrinsic vasoconstrictor control, and then number of red blood cells present, no? So kini all in all, kini mga factors, they could actually contribute to the arteriolar radius. Okay, kung mugamay ang arteriolar radius, mas taas ang total peripheral resistance. Kung mas dako ang arteriolar radius, mas gamay ang total peripheral resistance. And of course, the number of red blood cells can influence the blood viscosity. Okay, and all in all, kining arteriolar radius and blood viscosity can actually influence the total peripheral resistance. So we have to be very mindful of these specific na mga factors right here. so that we can maintain the mean arterial blood pressure. Kay dili ganina nato sila ma-maintain, for example, simba ko no, mo failure ang respiratory activity, mo gamay ang blood volume, mag-hemorrhage, for example. Okay, there will be no enough vasopressin and angiotensin 2, for example, no enough salt and water. Okay, this would actually influence the cardiac output and the total peripheral resistance, which is the main factor which maintains the mean arterial blood pressure. Okay, so I hope that what I mentioned earlier has made sense to you already. But if not, you can always read the books for further knowledge, no? And for you to actually learn more about this topic. So this is going to be the last topic for the VPhy101. Congratulations guys for making it this far. No? Ang question na lang is, do you have or will you have enough knowledge to actually answer the questions prepared for you next week at 3 to 5 p.m. on December 18? Or you need more readings to actually pass the subject? Again, thank you so much, guys, and God bless, no? God bless, and I hope that you will ace VPhy101. Again, this is not a farewell because I know that we will meet next semester. But again, this is Dr. Sheila Arabe. Thank you so much, and I'm very, very grateful to be your course in charge for this subject. I hope that I touched your lives. I hope that I made a difference in your lives, and I hope that I inspired you. And whatever shortcomings that I have during our lectures or our laboratories, I hope that I can make up for that in my next students in VPhy101 and even you in VPhy102. Okay, so thank you so much. Merry Christmas and a Happy New Year in advance, guys, no? So, just love, no? Okay, trabaho lang, walang personalan. Okay, thank you and God bless us all. Bye.